This is Kurtop. Here are the 100 strangest archaeological finds from recent years. Egyptian artifacts in Antarctica. This story seems like science fiction, but some sources, including World War II military reports, mention strange discoveries in Queen Maud Land, Antarctica. Among them are fragments of columns supposedly covered with hieroglyphs and remains of stone structures resembling Egyptian capitals. None of this has been officially acknowledged, and all objects have either vanished or been labeled natural formations. But the question remains, where did this evidence come from? One theory says Antarctica didn't exist in ancient times. The 16th century Peary race map accurately shows the continent's coastline beneath the ice, a detail modern cartographers could only match using satellites. How did a 1500s cartographer know this? And if not, who did he copy from? Some alternative researchers believe that civilizations could have moved between continents long before our current ideas about migration. If Egypt really was part of a network spanning the Earth, then maybe its traces can truly be found in the most unexpected places. Where? In a private report that leaked online, there was mention of a fragment of an artifact found in an icy cave, a metal of unknown alloy with engravings and undeciphered symbols similar to Egyptian ones. But the artifact disappeared, and all members of the expedition signed a non-disclosure agreement. The petrified sequoia of California. In California, near the city of Calistoga, there is one of the largest petrified forests in the world. The age of this natural monument is about 3.5 million years. Giant sequoias once grew here, but a volcanic eruption buried the grove in ash and lava, halting decay in an oxygen-free environment. Mineral solution slowly saturated the wood, replacing its organic matter with silica. This is how stone replicas of the trunks formed, preserving bark, growth rings, and internal structure. The first mention of this place dates back to 1857, when settlers accidentally stumbled upon petrified trunks during construction. Later, scientists confirmed these were fossilized sequoia remains, over 2,000 years old at the time of the catastrophe. The area quickly became known as the California Petrified Forest. At the end of the 19th century, this place became privately owned and eventually turned into an open-air museum. In the 1880s, the writer Robert Louis Stevenson visited it, leaving the establishment in 1915. One of the trunks was exhibited at the Panama Pacific Exposition in San Francisco. Today, there is a tourist trail about 1 kilometer long on the territory. Many trunks remain half-buried, yet their structure is perfectly preserved. The Kalistoksky Forest remains a rare example of how a volcanic disaster did not destroy nature, but preserved it in stone, creating a unique testimony to the geological history of North America. Books bound in human skin. In the 19th century, there was a rare but real practice in Europe and the United States where books were bound in human skin. Specialists call it anthropodermic bibliopegy, which literally means a book bound in human. Skin was usually taken from executed criminals or patients in anatomical theaters. 1837, Boston, United States of America. Bandit James. Island requested his skin be used to bind his memoirs after his death. The cover reads in Latin, "This book is made from alien skin." Dow, 1830, Devon, England. Rat catcher George Cadmar poisoned his wife. After his execution, his skin bound a John Milton poetry collection. 1882, France. A countess who died of tuberculosis left instructions for astronomer Camille Flammarion to use her skin for the first copy of his book Terre du Ciel. Regarding whole collections, the Harvard Library in the United States has at least 3 volumes. One 17th century treatise in such a binding contains a note about Jonas Wright, whose skin was used. August 4, 1632. The John Hay Library in London confirms the existence of a Vesalius medical atlas with a brown human cover. Motives varied: crime memories, souvenir rarity, scientific interest. Legally, it was a gray area. The bodies of criminals were often given to surgical schools, and the leftovers were used for leather. These bindings are not put on display, but they are not destroyed either. Institutions consider them historical artifacts, showing how far people could go in search of a unique edition, UFOs and fakes. One of the most sensational stories is the Roswell alien autopsy. That video where a strange creature with a large head lies on a table while doctors pull something out of it. In the 90s, the video aired to millions on television and most believed it, but it was later revealed as staged. The creator of the video, Ray Santilli, later admitted yes, the film is a recreation and the real footage is supposedly lost, but he still claims that he saw the original and the frames match what was shown to CIA employees. Interestingly, even after the forgery was confessed, people still believed in it. Now, this fragment is being sold as a non-fungible token for $1 million. Why do this? What does a fake offer, if anything? The main thing is hype, attention, belief, and money. More hype makes it harder to find the truth and easier for speculation to replace reality. So here's the question. If even lies help strengthen belief, then who is blurring the line between facts and fakes, and why? Pharaoh and two queens. In Egypt, Pharaoh Amenhotep III's tomb was opened after 20 years of restoration. This is one of the largest projects in the Valley of the Kings in recent decades. Amenhotep III ruled Egypt from 1390 to 1350 before Christ, and was seen as one of the most powerful rulers of the 18th dynasty. His reign became a symbol of the flourishing of architecture, art, and diplomacy. The tomb was opened to the public in Luxor on October 4, and on the walls you can once again see scenes depicting the pharaoh and his wife, Queen T, and their daughter, Sidamun. The complex consists of 3 halls, the main burial chamber, and 2 side rooms for the female members of the royal family. T rose from a humble background to become a leading woman of her era, and her daughter Sidamun married her own father. As required by the religious traditions of strengthening the dynasty, the sarcophagus itself and the treasures of the tomb were lost in ancient times, but the walls and architecture have been preserved. Ancient priests later relocated Amenhotep III's mummy to his grandfather, Amenhotep II's tomb, where it was found in the 19th century. Today, the remains of the pharaoh are kept in the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization, the oldest mineral on Earth. In 2001, a unique zircon crystal was discovered in Australia, which is recognized as the oldest mineral on Earth. Its age is an impressive 4 billion years, which makes it a witness to the earliest stages of our planet's formation. This tiny crystal lets scientists learn how Earth cooled and formed in its first billions of years. Today, this rare artifact can be seen at the Geology Museum of the University of Wisconsin in Madison, United States of America. Zirconium. Zircon is interesting not only because of its age, but also because its resistance to destruction allows it to preserve information about ancient processes that took place on Earth. This makes it a true keeper of our planet's history. Triangular shield. 20 kilometers southeast of Sofia, the capital of Bulgaria, archaeologists have excavated a rare Roman watchtower. Its base is an equilateral triangle with sides about 7 meters long. Dating by coins of Emperor Caracalla places it at the end of the 2nd century AD. This is unusual for the Roman Empire. Most outposts were square or circular. The question arises, why a triangle? The tower's narrow tip faces the slope, causing battering rams or stones to slide off without damaging the masonry. Inside, they discovered a stone well and remains of a wooden floor rebuilt during the Byzantine era and Second Bulgarian Empire. Similar shapes are found only at the border with watchtowers. The Romans used the term limes for the full border system of ramparts, roads, and fortresses in Bulgaria. This is the earliest example of irregular planning. Instead of the standard template, the engineers chose a geometry that better suited the mountainous terrain. Today, the tower belongs to the Urvich Museum complex. It shows that Roman builders were able to deviate from standards when local conditions required it. Bread with the image of Christ. In Turkey, archaeologists have found a rare artifact of early Christianity, a charred loaf of bread with the image of Jesus Christ, which had been buried underground for about 1,200 years. The discovery was made in Karaman province at the Toprak Tepe archaeological site, where the city of Ironopolis once stood. The bread dates to the 7th-8th centuries AD, when Christian symbolism was just starting to take established forms. This is one of 5 loaves from the same layer, all preserved by natural carbonization. Intense heating without air. One features a faint embossed image of Christ and the inscription, "With gratitude to the blessed Jesus." Archaeologists note that the image does not correspond to the traditional type of Pantocrator known from Byzantine icons, but instead shows Christ as a sower, a symbol of fertility, labor, and the cycle of life. Other loaves bear crosses and ornaments, one of which resembles a Maltese cross. Researchers believe this is more than food. It's a special liturgical bread, an early form of the Eucharist. Chemical analysis showed that finely ground wheat was used in the composition mixed with ash and salts, which confirms its ritual purpose. The unique preservation kept the bread intact for 12 centuries without turning to dust. This is one of the best preserved finds of Christian ritual food in history. An extremely rare discovery, a rare mastodon tusk was found in Florida, which became a real sensation. 29-year-old Alec Lundberg, while diving with his friend near Venice Beach, stumbled upon this unique artifact. Typically, only prehistoric shark teeth and mammoth tusk fragments are found here, making Lundberg's discovery especially valuable. Experts from the Bishop Museum of Science and Nature in Bradenton confirmed the authenticity of the tusk, noting it as extremely rare. Lundberg must still notify the Florida Museum of Natural History to assess the find's scientific significance. Mastodon tusks are usually only a few inches long and sell for $20 to $350, but Lundberg's find could be worth around $5,000. Interestingly, the tusk remained intact when lifted from the seafloor. Mastodons, which lived 5.4 million years ago and went extinct about 10,000 years ago, were relatives of modern elephants. Fossils are typically found in Pliocene and Pleistocene deposits. Mastodon fossils, such as tusks, bones, and skulls, are mainly found in just 4 states: Indiana, Colorado, California, and New York. Therefore, the discovery in Florida is a rare and significant find. And once again, the Voynich manuscript. American medievalists, using multispectral scanning, found out how a 17th century Prague physician tried to decipher the mysterious Voynich manuscript. Scientists used multispectral analysis to study the manuscript, obtaining images that are inaccessible to ordinary research. This technology makes it possible to reveal erased or faded texts, since iron-based ink can fluoresce under ultraviolet light. Recently, historian Liza Feigen Davis analyzed these images and discovered vertical columns of symbols on one of the pages. The first column showed the 23-letter classical Latin alphabet. The second had symbols from the manuscript's unknown alphabet, and the third displayed the Latin alphabet shifted by 1 character. This table appears to attempt deciphering the text with a substitution cipher, a method common in the Middle Ages and early modern period. Comparing handwriting of the manuscript's owners revealed that Johannes Marcus Marzi, a scholar and court physician, created the table. He owned the book from 1662 to 1665 and tried to decipher the manuscript, just like his predecessors and successors. Multispectral analysis also confirmed that the manuscript is not a palimpsest, and carbon-14 analysis correctly determined the date of its creation. The year 1425, a city without walls. Near Hradec Králové in the Czech Republic, archaeologists uncovered a 62-acre Celtic settlement, roughly the size of 25 football fields, dating by coins and pottery, 4th century before Christ, late Iron Age. The culture is known as Latin, the common style of weapons and ornaments among Central European Celts. There are no walls or ditches, which was uncommon then. Defense depended on trade links, not fortifications. During the excavation season, archaeologists collected 13,000 bags of finds, bronze and iron brooches, glass beads, gold and silver coins, pieces of amber, and high-quality ceramics. Amber came from the north via the so-called Amber Road, a land route between the Baltic coast and the Adriatic. Development peaked in the 2nd century before Christ and the 1st century before Christ. The inhabitants left the settlement without any signs of fire or raid. The likely reason was a shift in the main trade routes. Today, the excavation is known as one of the largest Celtic complexes in the Czech Republic and shows how the economy could replace fortress walls. Whale Cemetery of Chukotka. In the far Chukotka region, near the village of Yenrakinot, a drone captured one of the most unusual places in the Arctic, the Whale Cemetery. Bones and skulls of sea giants have gathered on the tundra shore over decades, making this spot sacred to locals. Whaling in Chukotka has ancient roots and is still allowed in a limited form. Harpooned whales are brought ashore, a part of the carcass is ritually returned to the sea, and the bones are left along the coast. In the 1990s, due to food shortages, commercial whaling was temporarily permitted. The remains began to be stored on the outskirts of settlements, and over time they formed entire clusters that became known as whale cemeteries. The Chukchi performed rituals to appease the spirits of the sea, placing whale skulls upright, believing that this way the animal spirit looks at the ocean and sees the way back to be reborn. These traditions continue today, though whaling now follows International Whaling Commission regulations. The whale cemetery in Yenrakinot has become a symbol of the bond between humans and nature for locals. This isn't a place of death, but a reminder of life's cycle and respect for animals that give us food and warmth. The Nazis' gold was finally discovered in the summer of 2025. In Poland, archaeologists began what they had long feared and treasure hunters had dreamed of, the official excavation of the legendary Reich's gold, calmly and methodically, without flashy headlines or sensational maps. Like investigating an old murder near the village of Mykolaiki in the Kashubian forest. Ground-penetrating radars showed an anomaly more than 10 meters deep, rectangular in shape with metallic reflections, and for the first time in all these years, the Polish authorities gave official permission to excavate the anomaly. The place has long been surrounded by legends. One version says Ernst Koch's convoy, the former Gauleiter of East Prussia, used this route to allegedly move boxes of gold, platinum, and gems from Königsberg. Another version claims an auxiliary SS warehouse here stored documents, paintings, and church relics, not gold. The archaeologists did not promise treasures, but even the first centimeters of soil revealed oddities: metal seal fragments, box splinters, and wooden debris marked BSCH, an abbreviation in the 1940s for Bundeslackhaus, the state mint. The official press covered the excavation quietly, but behind the scenes, the adults were as happy as children. Every meter down seemed like a step closer to the mystery's solution, one of the most sensational wartime legends in Europe. Old reports resurfaced, SS protocols and Polish foresters' records, on German trucks without headlights. In April 1945, it all came together into a story that was long considered a fairy tale. But the deeper the work went, the more the fairy tale turned into a documentary thriller. At 7 meters deep, there were steel grate remains, lock fragments, a bitumen layer suggesting an attempt to seal treasure, and scanners detected a void below. For the first time in years, local authorities allowed journalists to show what happens when legend meets reality. The strangest part began 3 weeks before the end of the season. Suddenly, only a small group of specialists and the police remained at the excavation site. Officially, it was due to collapse risk. Unofficially, they found unexpected metallic objects. From this point, the details differ. Some talk about a massive door at an angle, others about traces of a tunnel leading under the old road from the Reich era. Archaeologists are silent and reports remain unpublished. The Polish Ministry of Culture issued one statement. Parts of an engineering structure and items needing expert analysis were found. There are no photos or comments at all. It is in such an environment that myths are born. When a fact is not accompanied by an explanation, there is room for speculation. They say that one of the researchers who participated in the excavation resigned the day after the site was closed. Some say the Warsaw lab received not gold, but something that should not have been handled without the military present. Goddess of Death, Cyprus, Lemba settlement. A small limestone figurine from about 3,500 before Christ depicts a female silhouette with broad shoulders, arms on hips, a head, and a stump. These figures are often seen as fertility statuettes, but this one was different. Lord Elfin was the first modern owner. All 7 family members died within 6 years. The statuette changed hands, and in the next 3 homes, similar tragedies, deaths, illnesses, accidents occurred. When the new owner suspected a connection, He donated the figurine to the Royal Scottish Museum in Edinburgh, where rumors grew after a curator who worked with the exhibit died within a year. That's how the nickname Goddess of Death was born. What's real and what's just legend? Few records exist on early owners, and dates often conflict. The curse likely arose from coincidences and media stories. The events are so terrifying that the figure is now a staple in cursed collections, like Egyptian mummies and the Basan of As. Ironically, it was likely created as a symbol of life and fertility, a goddess statuette meant to bring children, not take them away. Today, the exhibit includes a disclaimer about archaeology, facts, curses, and related culture. Talking about strange discoveries, I can't skip the Lembe goddess. It's rare for a small piece of limestone to inspire a legend lasting 4,000 years, from a Cypriot village to a museum display. A person can't fit through there. Inside the Great Pyramid, there are odd passages long believed to be ventilation shafts, but neither air nor people can pass through them. These shafts start in the so-called Queen's Chamber and extend upward at a sharp angle, ending in stone plugs with copper fittings. At first, they weren't even taken seriously, but then a robot was sent in there. In 1993, engineer Rudolf Gantenbrink designed a mechanism that was able to crawl inside. It moved along the smooth walls as if the shaft had been specially polished. At the end of its path, the robot came across a stone slab with two pins resembling door handles. It seemed like something was hidden behind it, but it was urgently called back. The archaeologists stayed silent. Egyptian authorities denied a second attempt, and Gantenbrink was removed from the project. The second robot, launched later, drilled a small hole revealing another chamber. It's unclear if it was empty or if no one will say what was inside. No one could have used these shafts during their lifetime. They are too narrow, but they are perfect for storing something that was meant to remain untouched. Antibiotics of ancient Egypt. Archaeologists have determined that the ancient Egyptians used antibiotics thousands of years before science discovered them. A study of mummies showed a high content of tetracycline, a substance that was officially discovered only in 1948. It was detected in bone and tooth dentin, suggesting regular consumption throughout their lives. The discovery happened by accident. Student archaeologists decided to recreate an ancient Egyptian beer recipe, following the records and illustrations they had found. Chemical analysis of the samples revealed that tetracycline is produced during fermentation. This is explained by the presence of Streptomyces microorganisms in the mash, which are capable of synthesizing antibiotic substances. The results confirm that the inhabitants of ancient Egypt not only mastered the technology of fermentation, but also probably understood its medicinal effects. The high concentrations of antibiotic found in the mummies indicate that beer was used not just as a beverage, but as a means of preventing and treating infections. The singing sarcophagi of the Serapeum. Beneath the sands of Saqqara lies a 300-meter-long gallery called the Serapeum, with 40 granite boxes in its side niches, each weighing over 60 tons. Egyptologists call them the sarcophagi of the sacred Apis bulls, but inside they are almost empty, with only rare bone fragments remaining. But the main thing here is the acoustics. When acousticians from Massachusetts activated a low-frequency generator, in 2019 the granite inside one box emitted a pure 110 Hz tone, matching the human body's resonance frequency. Standing inside, the sound vibrates in your bones. Ancient priests could have used this to put themselves and possibly bulls into an altered state. But then why would there be half-meter thick lids with mirror-polished interiors? A hypothesis suggests the boxes weren't tombs, but resonators that amplified Earth's vibrations. Their polished interiors reflected sound, producing repeated standing waves. Some researchers believe the complex may have housed a sound organ, with chambers tuned to different frequencies. If that's the case, the Serapeum is not a cemetery. It's an ancient laboratory of acoustic energy. Unidentified flying object S are not about the 20th century. When we hear the word unidentified flying object, the 20th century immediately comes to mind. Roswell, films, tinfoil hats. But the truth is, people saw unidentified objects long before the era of television and aviation. We have documented cases. Since ancient Rome, chronicles have noted fiery shields, flying ships, strange sky beings, and even abductions in the clouds. Historians, monks, and officials, not fiction writers, recorded all this in the 4th century AD. The Roman chronicler Julius of Obsequens, in his book Liber Pro Digiorum, describes dozens of such cases. Over Rome, they allegedly saw blazing spheres, glowing ships, and sky-descending beings. At the very least, that's how the eyewitnesses perceived it. Pliny the Elder also mentions a mysterious burning shield that hovered over the city during the Second Punic War. This isn't the only case. Similar accounts appear in the chronicles of Ireland, China, and India. Was it just a coincidence in symbolism? A mass hallucination? We saw the same phenomenon, just called it different names in different eras. Once they were gods, then angels, today aliens. But the essence might be the same. While gardening in the British county of Hampshire, a couple discovered a stash of 70 Tudor-era gold coins hidden in their garden. The discovery was made in the village of Milford-on-Sea, not far from the ancient Christchurch Priory. Specialists at the British Museum confirmed the coins were authentic and dated them to the 15th, 16th centuries. The earliest specimens date back to the 1420s, during the reign of Henry VI, while most are from the 1530s, the time of Henry VI's second. Some of the coins still bear the initials of his wives, Catherine of Aragon and Jane Seymour. Numismatists estimated the hoard's value at $230,000, equal to a house price at the time. According to historians, the gold was hidden by church officials or wealthy merchants during the dissolution of the monasteries. When Henry VIII was seizing church lands and property, the find's location shows it's near religious centers and dates to the secularization period, when many clergy tried to protect their savings. After the official registration of the find, the coins were temporarily stored at the British Museum, and later they were put up for auction in Zurich. The hoard is unique because it was discovered on private land. The family who made the discovery has full rights to own the treasure. The story became one of the most sensational numismatic finds in Britain in recent decades. The meteorite that changed the course of Christianity. Abruzzo, Central Italy. Lake Sorrente, about 100 kilometers from Rome in the mountains, is a 140-meter-wide round lake, believed by geologists to be a meteorite crater. Radiocarbon dating of charred wood from the ejecta gives a date of around 312 AD, which is the time of Constantine's battle at the Milvian Bridge. Swedish researcher Jens Ormö suggested a simple explanation. A bright fireball and mushroom-shaped dust cloud may have appeared as a shining sign in the sky. Eusebius of Caesarea recounts Constantine's vision of the cross and light, after which Constantine put the symbol on shields and won. Calculations show an energy of about 1 kiloton, comparable to a small nuclear warhead. The flash could be seen from very far away. Archaeological evidence includes nearby indirect traces, a 4th century abandoned village catacomb mass burials, and local legends of a sun-star splitting oaks. There is no direct evidence linking the meteorite to Constantine's vision. It's a hypothesis. But the coincidence of the dates and the scale of visibility makes it one of the most convincing. A natural phenomenon could have been the trigger for the decision after which Christianity was legalized throughout the Roman Empire. The uranium cubes of Haigerloch. Haigerloch is a small town in the southwest of Germany, right under the church in a chamber carved into the rock. In 1944-1945, there was an attempt to build a nuclear reactor, a facility designed to sustain a reaction for hours, not a bomb. Werner Heisenberg's team hung hundreds of cast uranium cubes on steel cables in a tank with heavy water as a moderator at the bottom, surrounded by protection, cables, and instruments. The idea behind the setup is simple. Slowed down neutrons are more likely to hit uranium. The chain reaction should sustain itself. If so, the setup works. So, what failed? There was a chronic shortage of material. Uranium arrived in batches of varying quality. There was little heavy water, and the chamber itself was cramped, so the lattice of cubes couldn't be spread out as desired. Engineers adjusted suspension distance, rearranged clusters, added rows, but the setup still wouldn't work. On paper, it seemed close, but in reality, it wasn't. In April 1945, the Allied Alsos group arrived here. They opened the chamber, drained the tank, removed the suspensions, cut off the uranium, and took away the documentation and some of the equipment as a trophy. Most went to the United States, the rest went to scientific centers. From then on, the cubes began separate lives. Stories appear now and then, another found in a university basement, a physics office, or a museum. They're easy to spot. There's a loop mark on the edge, and the surface is darkened with an oxide layer. Sometimes cubes from Heigerloch appear at auctions without proper provenance. That's where the legends come from. They were sunk during evacuation, buried in the forest, or ended up in people's pockets. The paper certificates for many samples are indeed lost, so rumors outlive the facts. According to the hottest conspiracy theory, the uranium cubes from Heigerloch were supposedly used not only in the reactor's suspended grid, but also in the wiring of the Diglock project. They say heavy metal was used as shielding or nodes inside the bell-shaped machine under Silesia. Add to Heigerloch the concrete ring in Ludwikovice, Purple Zerum 525, and Kamler. The theory is ready. Under the church, they cast uranium blanks for the bell, intended to dampen gravity. But when you choose emotions, nothing remains. No blueprints, records of materials for the bell, or photos showing assemblies these cubes might fit. The surviving Heigerloch samples clearly belong to a nuclear facility. Their shape and suspension marks show they were part of a reactor grid, not a time machine. The idea that the cubes are parts of the bell remains an unproven legend, much like the bell itself, which probably exists only in stories. We can forgive the ancients for inaccuracies in cosmic alignment. We can explain mistakes, but Egypt did not make mistakes. The Great Pyramid is aligned to the cardinal points with less than 0.05 degrees deviation, more precise than most modern buildings. To align properly, knowing north isn't enough. You must also consider Earth's precession, its axial wobble that gradually shifts the stars over millennia. To build the pyramid so precisely, the builders would have needed centuries of star observations or data that likely didn't exist. But what's even stranger is how the three main pyramids of Giza are positioned. They replicate the shape of the three stars in Orion's belt not approximately, but with precise alignment to the era of 10,500 before Christ. According to astronomical models, that's exactly when the Orion constellation occupied the same position above the horizon. The Egyptians called Orion Sahu, representing Osiris, the god of the afterlife. Coincidence? Another mystery is linked to this alignment. The pyramid's center is closest to Earth's center, equidistant from the poles and the prime meridians, Earth's geographic axis. How was this determined? Science relies on observation, trial and error, and millennia of experience. The alternative is prior knowledge, and the pyramid is just a trace left by their instruments or a landmark for those who were supposed to return. The oldest burial in Malaysia. In Malaysia, archaeologists have discovered more than a dozen ancient burials up to 16,000 years old. The discoveries were made in the Ninggiri Valley, about 215 kilometers north of Kuala Lumpur. These caves may soon be flooded when a reservoir is created for a hydroelectric power plant, which is planned for 2027. If this happens, 20 square miles of land will be submerged. Most of the skeletons found belong to the pre-Neolithic culture of the region. Some scientists associate this culture with the Hobbinian hunter-gatherers, known for their distinctive stone tools found throughout Southeast Asia. It is also believed that these people used wild plants, many of which became the basis of the region's modern flora. Archaeologists found 16 skeletons in 13 caves at 4 different sites. Most of them were buried in a squatting position, which is characteristic of the pre-Neolithic period. However, one of the skeletons was buried in an extended position, and it is about 6,000 years old. In addition to the skeletons, more than 71,000 artifacts were discovered, including stone tools, pottery, and ornaments. One of the key discoveries was a complete human skeleton in the Gua Keledung Kessel cave, which is about 14,000 to 16,000 years old. This is the oldest and most complete skeleton found in Malaysia. Among the burial items were stone tools, crystals, and hematite minerals. Where Jesus healed the blind man. Archaeologists discovered an ancient dam near the Pool of Siloam, where, according to the Gospel, Jesus healed a blind man. The structure is about 2,800 years old. The dam was built in the 9th century, before Christ, presumably during the reign of King Joash or Amaziah. It is roughly 12 meters high, 21 meters long, and 8 meters wide. It was built to collect water from the Gihon spring and floods passing through ancient Jerusalem's valley. Researchers from the Israel Antiquities Authority and Weizmann Institute dated the construction by analyzing branches in the mortar. Radiocarbon analysis dated it to 800-5795, before Common Era. This period was marked by alternating droughts and heavy rains, which forced the city's residents to create the first major water supply system. The excavation leaders note that the dam became the largest structure of its time and the oldest in the history of Jerusalem. It shows both engineering knowledge and a true response to climate change. Yosef Sido, the director of the Antiquities Authority, called it one of the most significant monuments of the First Temple period, an ornament for the dukes in southern Poland. Archaeologists found a gilded silver ornament fragment from the 14th, 15th centuries, measuring 3 by 2 centimeters and set with a purple amethyst in the moat of ruined Kolnu Castle. Researchers Lech Merrick and Beata Miazga used Raman spectroscopy, shining a laser on the stone to identify its composition, and confirmed it is natural quartz with some iron. Most late medieval jewels are found in treasures or burials, but this item was intentionally placed. Here, the item was most likely dropped while entering or leaving the customs castle of Duke Borislav III Brzeski. The craftsmanship suggests it may be a round part, a brooch, fibula, or crown element. Back then, stones were selected for more than their beauty. Amethyst was seen as a talisman protecting against poison and betrayal, so it was often included in the regalia of princes and church prelates. The mysteries of the Chinese settlement. In the Chinese city of Shaoxing, Zhenjiang province, during the construction of a water treatment plant, workers came across unusual layers of soil. Archaeologists from the Provincial Institute of Cultural Relics and Archaeology excavated and found a 2,500-year-old coastal settlement. The find dates back to the time of the Yue Kingdom, which existed during the Warring States period, from 475 to 221 before Christ. Excavations showed that the city of Baikao Yuan served as a trade and maritime center. 2 large wooden structures covering about 1,300 square meters were discovered. A stilt house with terraces and walls of straw, reeds, and wooden posts bound with grass ropes, and a massive platform of 10 rows of piles along the Kaui River bank. This construction needed precise calculations and knowledge of loads and soil moisture. Experts note the mortise and tenon joints in the wood show an understanding of 3-dimensional construction, a trait of later dynasties. Clay urns, porcelain bowls, bronze drills, and stone tripods have been discovered. Particular interest was aroused by the pig burials, complete animal skeletons laid along the shore, which likely served as part of a sacrificial ritual. These rituals show the settlement's people linked water to fertility and life. Currently, archaeologists and city authorities are preparing a plan to reduce the area of the archaeological reserve. The place is called a time capsule of the late Bronze Age, which helps us understand how, in ancient China, the first king, Belize Jungli Caracol, lived independently of rivers and seas. For almost 40 years, the archaeologist couple Arlen and Diana Cheese have been excavating stairs, markets, and dams here until they reached the heart of the Khan complex, the heavenly place. Under thick slabs, they discovered a narrow passage leading to a cinnabar-painted chamber. On the floor lay a skeleton with jade beads, 11 painted vessels, carved bone tubes, a mosaic mask, and raw meat-colored shells from Pandilius nearby. The steles hieroglyphs have long referred to the city's first ruler, Chakruka of Thunder. The text now matched the bone. The dating is around the year 350, just 2-3 decades after the ascension in 331. Caracol was already independent before the envoys from Teotihuacan arrived in 378. He didn't awaken due to outside influence. He was already ruling, trading, and collecting tribute. The items around the body tell their own story. Jade shows royal blood, cinnabar represents sacrifice, Pandilius shells show Carib trade, and bone tubes belong to priests who inhaled cocoa before rituals. These aren't random items. but portraits of the state collected in its founder's personal capsule. For scientists, this is not just a skeleton, but the first chapter of Caracol's history, hidden by the lianas for almost 1,500 years. The skulls are not of the same type. When archaeologists started systematically opening tombs in southern Egypt and Nubia in the early 20th century, they noticed something odd. Some of the skulls they found did not match human anatomy. Yes, they had eye sockets, a jaw, a parietal part, but all were abnormal, elongated occipits, oversized cranial vaults, and missing normal skull sutures. Some skulls were so elongated they looked like cones, suggesting artificial deformation, but no such evidence was found. Later, in the 1950s and 60s, British and French anatomists began discussing these findings at closed conferences, but there were almost no official publications. Why? Maybe because these skulls weren't just found in Egypt. Similar ones were also found in Peru, Mexico, and the Caucasus. The age ranges from 2,000 to 5,000 years. Different continents, different cultures, the same result. Some believe elongated skulls are caused by head binding, which the Maya practiced in infancy. However, several Egyptian findings indicate a different bone structure. The shape was always like that. If it's not a disease, it's either another species or ours, just forgotten. Some images in the temples even reinforce this impression. There are beings with elongated heads in special headdresses. Maybe not to decorate, but to hide or highlight instead. If these skulls aren't fake, a coincidence, or deformities, then who were the Egyptians living with? Maya blue paint. Scientists are still studying the technology behind the creation of Maya blue paint, a pigment that preserves its color for thousands of years. Analysis of ceramics and frescoes samples revealed the base is natural indigo mixed with the mineral palygorskite, a unique clay with microscopic channels. When heated, indigo molecules are locked inside these channels, which makes the paint resistant to moisture, sunlight, and chemical effects. Archaeologists discovered this pigment on ritual objects, temple walls, and ceramics from the 8th-9th centuries AD, and the paint remains unfaded after centuries of exposure. Modern research has shown that a similar structure can be used to create new long-lasting pigments and protective coatings. The Maya technology became an example of how ancient chemistry defined its era by creating a material that modern industry only achieved thousands of years later. The Sultan's treasures, the Hell Well, or the Barhout Hole, is a mysterious sinkhole in Yemen surrounded by legends and myths. The locals believe that at the bottom of the well, there are the Sultan's treasures, guarded by jinn and the dead, and that a cemetery-like smell comes from there. Research has confirmed some of these legends. Speleologists explored the sinkhole and collected samples from the bottom. The sinkhole has a conical shape. Its diameter at the surface is about 30 meters, and it widens to 120 meters at the bottom, with a depth of 112 meters. The upper layer is porous and lets water through, while below it becomes denser and impermeable, which leads to the formation of 4 waterfalls and stalagmites. The Sultan's treasures turned out to be cave pearls, rare formations of calcium carbonate that form around a grain of sand or a piece of wood. In Barkuta, they have an emerald golden color, which probably misled ancient observers. Snakes and arthropods inhabit the bottom of the sinkhole. Locals say the grave-like smell comes from decomposing animal bodies, mainly birds that enter the well for shelter from the heat. After reaching the bottom, they can't fly back up due to the depth. There are 2 main hypotheses about the well's origin. It may be the former vent of an extinct underground volcano, or a natural well formed by erosion of underground water layers over millions. Most likely the Barkuta well was formed in the second way, which explains its unusual structure and contents. The oldest Christian church, archaeologists discovered the remains of an Armenian church almost 2,000 years old, making it one of the oldest in the world and the oldest on the territory of Armenia. The University of Münster in Germany, which worked with the Armenian Academy of Sciences on the excavations, called this a sensational find, proving early Christianity in Armenia. The church was found during excavations in Artashite, which was once a thriving metropolis and the capital of the ancient Armenian kingdom. Experts believe that the church was built in the 4th century AD, at the same time when the Echmiadzin Cathedral, the first Armenian church considered the oldest in the world, was constructed. The discovered building is the oldest archaeologically confirmed temple on the territory of Armenia, and it is the first known octagonal church in Armenia. Similar structures are found on the eastern coast of the Mediterranean Sea and are also dated to the 4th century. The church resembled early Christian memorial buildings. Its diameter was about 30 meters. The floor was made of a mixture of sand and cement, and the walls were made of terracotta, probably brought from Greece or Italy. Scientists found traces of wooden platforms, allowing them to accurately date the structure. With the help of radiocarbon analysis, sculptures of vanished time. In China's Guizhou province, an unusual stone valley was created named Yelang. It was built by the artist, cartoonist, and professor Sun Peilun, who dedicated more than 20 years to this project. Across roughly 185,000 square meters, he built hundreds of stone sculptures, towers, and walls. The complex includes artificial castles, ponds, and alleys, with faces carved into the rocks. Local stonemasons took part in the work, whom the creator taught a special technique to work without blueprints, using stones as if they were building simple fences. This approach made it possible to preserve the natural shapes and irregularities of the rock. The material used was local limestone, which is accessible and environmentally friendly. The idea for the Yelang Valley came to the artist after a visit to the United States, where he saw the Crazy Horse Memorial. Peilun decided to create a similar project in China to commemorate the vanished Yelang tribe, which lived on this land almost 2,000 years ago. No written sources remain from the ancient city, and the valley became an attempt to restore their memory through art. Today, the complex is a cultural center. University buildings are nearby, and students assist Peilun with construction and upkeep. The project blends archaeology, architecture, and memory. The Yelang Valley shows how modern people can revive the past using their own ideas rather than discoveries about what may have been forgotten. Altai Mummy, Altai Pazuric burial mounds. Thanks to the ice, a 2,500-year-old person, skin and almost faded tattoos have been preserved. Scientists re-examined them, looked at the images under different lighting, studied the pigments, and reproduced the techniques on models. It turned out unexpectedly that multiple people worked on the tattoo. The right arm features finely detailed deer and big cats by a skilled master, while the left has simpler, uneven geometry, likely done by an apprentice. This is the first strong case of several artists working on the same body. The pigment is regular soot with outlining done by a single needle and shading made easier using a comb, a stick with several needles for quick dotting. This combination explains the line's depth and texture under a microscope. The incisions made during mummification, in some places, cut through the designs. So the tattoos weren't preserved for rituals, they were part of daily life, showing status, group ties, or personal symbols. Skin lines show the Iron Age community's structure. There are masters, there are apprentices, and there is a demand for complex body ornamentation that was important during life, not after death. In an empty Roman tomb in the village of Velkertshofen in southern Germany, archaeologists discovered a massive stone circle 12 meters in diameter, dating back to the Roman Empire era. Inside, they found no bones or objects. The tomb was completely empty. Researchers believe that this is a cenotaph, a monument to a person buried elsewhere. The structure near an ancient Roman road seemed to symbolize memory and family status more than serve as a burial. Beside the circle, a preserved stone foundation remains, possibly for a statue or tombstone. Such a find is unique for Bavaria. Similar monuments were previously found only in Italy and Central Europe. Scientists think the monument may have been built to honor a Roman military commander or official who died far from home. The empty tomb is a rare Roman memorial in Germany that helps us understand how memory and immortality were viewed in the empire's provinces. The Timeless Sword, Hubei, China, 1965. From the flooded tomb, they recover wooden scabbards containing a bronze blade that has been underwater for 2,500 years and still shines. This is the sword of Gujian, Yue's ruler. The metal amazed everyone. It was bronze with additives that slow down corrosion. The surface is mirror polished, the blade's geometric pattern is preserved, and after conservation, the edge cuts paper easily. The handle was once wrapped in silk. The guard is decorated with an inlay on the blade. 8 ancient hieroglyphs are engraved. Gujian, the king of Yue, made this sword for himself. The inscription identifies the owner, whom Chinese chronicles described as a stubborn ruler. He survived, grew stronger, and got revenge. Why did the blade last centuries? The dense lacquered scabbard barely let in oxygen. The tomb's water was still, and the bronze alloy kept the edge sharp, creating an ideal capsule. Gujian's sword defies the typical image of primitive ancient weapons. Before us is a product of advanced technology and personal status, which has survived to this day in working condition. How did UFOs become a new religion? We live in a world where aliens are no longer science fiction, but almost a habit. Aliens aren't just a topic. They're a cultural phenomenon found in memes, movies, YouTube, Telegram channels, and merch, far beyond ufology. How did this happen? It began in the 20th century with books, rumors, and odd reports, including alleged footage of alien corpses and confessions from classified sources. Area 51 experiments. Then there were talk shows, investigations, documentaries, scandals, and all of it stopped being marginal. It became mainstream. For example, the fake Roswell alien autopsy footage, a total 90s hoax, got millions of views, was debunked. But this only strengthened fans' beliefs. If they're working so hard to hide it, there must be some truth to it. Charles Ford, founder of this movement, said at the century's start, "Science rejects too much, and official explanations aren't always true." His ideas inspired an entire generation of anomaly hunters. He said, "If strange things are happening, it means we have the wrong picture of the world." Today, science, politics, and religion cause skepticism. Yet people seem to trust in aliens more than governments. Reality seems different now. UFOs are a new mythology, a new religion. Instead of angels, there are grays instead of prophets. There are contactees instead of sacred books. There are leaks from forums, TikTok, and leaked reports. Even scarier, this belief is already controlling society in 2023. In the United States Congress, they seriously discuss the topic of UFOs. Hearings, reports, generals at the podium, and no one was laughing because the meme became reality. In a world where anything can be fake, aliens now symbolize truth and the search for it. It's paradoxical, but it's a mystery. In Abu Qir Bay, off the coast of Alexandria, archaeologists have recovered artifacts from an ancient city that lay underwater for more than 2,000 years. Excavations took place in Abu Qir Bay, where the Ptolemaic-era Port Canopus once stood. Here they discovered temple column fragments, a sphinx head, a priest statue, and a large headless granite torso. The work was conducted under the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities supervision, with divers using archaeological diving equipment. Archaeologists say a series of earthquakes and tidal shifts collapsed the Nile Delta, sending Canop underwater. After the submersion, silt and sand covered the streets, temples, and necropolises. The artifacts date to the Ptolemaic and Roman periods, roughly 3rd century before Christ to 3rd century AD. The image styles and stone types confirm this. Sheriff Fadi from the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities said all discovered items are being restored and will join the Secrets of the Sunken City exhibition at the National Museum of Alexandria. The exhibition already features 86 rare exhibits showing what life was like on the Egyptian coast in the days before the sea claimed this city. Fire, people, and dogs. Saxony-Anhalt, Germany, Gerstowitz district. Archaeologists have discovered 12 deep pits up to 2.5 meters deep, dating back to 3,400–3,050 before Christ. This is the Salzmunde culture, a local branch of the funnel-beaker culture. The finds suggest not regular garbage, but repeated rituals. The pits contain charred building remains, intact ceramic vessels, and both human and dog bones together in one complex. The dog was kept anatomically intact with fire traces, and a human skull was later placed nearby. So the pit was opened and used many times. In another place, a household stove was converted into a grave for 2 people, with traces of cremation on the bones before or during the burial. Why a dog? In ancient beliefs, they were guides to the other world, so their presence next to human remains is logical. For the transition ritual, objects and bones are arranged. These are not spontaneous burials, but structured scenarios involving fire, dismantling of structures, and partial reburials. Time matters. The Neolithic ended amid climate instability and neighboring community pressure. Crop failures and land competition may have heightened the need for ceremonies honoring ancestors and the household fire. That's why ovens and parts of houses symbolize the community's life in the ritual. DNA and isotopes will reveal if these were local people, the origin of the dogs, and if they belonged to one family or came from various settlements. The Golden Ring, Jerusalem, City of David. Archaeologists discovered a small gold ring about 2,300 years old beneath a late Roman early Byzantine building dating to the Second Temple period and Hellenistic influence. It is smooth without any inlays. The modest ring was not lying separately, but was in a filled technical layer of the foundation, with construction filled directly above it. That means it was placed there during laying, not accidentally lost. And this isn't the only case. Within a year in the same area, another similar ring and several small ornaments were found under the foundation. Researchers recall the Hellenistic custom where engaged girls or their families would bury jewelry and children's items in the foundation of a new house. It's a symbol of coming of age and seeking protection. The traits fit. Small feminine setting. Gold that was worn every day is now an artifact. In the Israel Antiquities Authority lab, the metal is analyzed for its alloy, checked for garnet or other stones, and compared to similar items to find its origin. The remains of the hobbit Taurin, as archaeologists called him, lived about 40,000–50,000 years ago, at a time when the last Neanderthals disappeared from the face of the earth. His remains were found in a cave in the south of France, where he was probably hiding from the severe cold. In 2015, archaeologists discovered a well-preserved fossilized jaw with 31 teeth and finger phalanges. Interestingly, Thorin's teeth, despite being worn from active chewing, were in good condition. Analysis showed that this was an adult male, probably quite young, since Neanderthals lived on average about 20 years. The most striking thing was the genetic research. Thorin's DNA was very different from all known Neanderthal samples. This indicates an isolated population that's separated from other Neanderthals about 100 to 105,000 years ago. Interestingly, just a 10-day walk from this cave, there was another Neanderthal community, but according to the analysis, they did not interact. Researchers are pondering how Neanderthals perceived the world and why they were so isolated. Being unsociable was one of their characteristic traits. When they existed, roughly 10,000 Neanderthals lived worldwide, and over thousands of years, they became uncommunicative. They had a high rate of inbreeding, which is confirmed by numerous congenital anomalies. Finding one of the last Neanderthals is an incredible stroke of luck. Bone isotopes confirm Taurin lived in the Ice Age's harsh climate. Scientists still debate whether Neanderthals disappeared because of the harsh climate or competition with Cro-Magnons. Anthropologists believe that climate was not the decisive factor, since the Ice Ages began long before their disappearance. Cro-Magnons likely displaced them and were open to interbreeding. Modern human genomes contain Neanderthal DNA, but no sapiens DNA has been found in Neanderthals. A bone fragment with a possible mammoth drawing was recently discovered in Russia's Bryansk region. This is a rare example that indicates the presence of visual art among Neanderthals, whereas Cro-Magnons left behind numerous works. Egyptian faience. Long before the invention of glass and glaze, Egyptians learned to create a material that combined the properties of stone and ceramics. Egyptian faience was a mixture of crushed quartz, lime, and copper compounds. During firing, a shiny blue crust formed on the surface due to copper oxidation in controlled conditions. Craftsmen varied the mixture and kiln oxygen pressure to create shades from turquoise to blue. Faience was used for amulets, figurines, vessels, and jewelry. It symbolized eternal life and the sun reflected in the Nile's waters. Modern chemists confirm that ancient craftsmen possessed techniques similar to those used in fine ceramics and enamel technologies. Restored samples of Egyptian faience show the same optical properties as modern architectural coatings, with metallic pigments. Research on this material is now used in creating durable decorative coatings and design solutions that replicate the self-illumination effect of ancient fans. Ice that is 1.2 million years old. In the laboratory of the Alfred Wegener Institute in Bremerhaven, Germany, scientists are cutting the oldest ice core on Earth, a 10 cm diameter, 2.8 kilometer long cylinder retrieved from 3,200 meters at Concordia Station, Antarctica. Radioisotope dating indicates an age of over 1.2 million years, which is twice as old as the previous record holder. Epocha is 800,000 years old. The air bubbles preserve the atmosphere of the past. Glaciologists want to know why. A million years ago, glacier cycles shifted from every 41,000 years. Earth shifted to a roughly 100,000 year cycle. Measuring carbon monoxide, 2-methane, and dust levels will directly show the link between greenhouse gases and temperature. And an unexpected bonus at the basal mark. The drill pierced a thin ice layer and retrieved a granite sample, likely from the Antarctic bedrock. Geologists can now date when the continent was covered in ice. Results will be available in a year. This core sample will give scientists a long timeline from the past and make climate models more accurate when we talk about rising carbon monoxide, 2 levels. The eye mountain is shaped like a diagram. Sometimes the mystery isn't hidden underground, it's on the surface right before our eyes. When you view the Giza complex from above and overlay the Eye of Horus, the ancient Egyptian symbol of omniscience, the pyramids, Sphinx, Queen's Chamber, shafts, and Grand Gallery align to form a shape that closely resembles this sacred symbol. The eye's center matches the Great Void, the tear aligns with the corridor, and the strokes match the shafts. Is this just a coincidence? In Egyptian tradition, the Eye of Horus is more than a symbol. It's a universe blueprint. Its parts are responsible for vision, hearing, taste, speech, touch, and thought. These 6 parts are said to precisely match the structure of the corridor inside the pyramid. And it wasn't modern esotericists who first talked about this, but mathematicians and architects who seriously analyzed the internal structure. If we assume that the pyramid was not a tomb, but a repository of knowledge, it is possible that it is encoded as a giant 3-dimensional model of giants from the Ice Age. In Yorkshire Dales National Park, on the slopes of Ingleborough Hill, there is one of the most unusual technological formations in the United Kingdom, the Norber erratics. These massive blocks of dark sandstone and shale rest on light limestone bases, creating the impression of unstable balance. The stones are about 12,000 to 17,000 years old. They were brought here by the last glacier that advanced from the north of England. After the ice retreated, the boulders stayed while erosion over millennia washed away the surrounding limestone. Where the stone shielded the surface from rain, small pedestals remain, making it seem as if the boulders are floating or were placed there deliberately. Today, more than 100 such stone blocks can be found on the slope of Ingleborough. They vary in size and shape, but all demonstrate the same principle of formation, a combination of the power of ice and the work of time. Geologists view the Norberg boulders as valuable evidence of the last glaciation and a rare example of natural balance formed without human involvement. The site is listed as a protected geological monument in the United Kingdom and is a major natural attraction in northern England. For researchers, this is more than boulders. It's an open archive of the region's climate history, preserving evidence of glacial processes that reshaped Europe's landscape. Skeleton Lake. At the bottom of Rupkund Lake in the Indian Himalayas, hundreds of human skeletons have been discovered, which gave it the name Skeleton Lake. The age of these remains varies greatly, and it is still not exactly known how all these people died. It was once thought they were victims of a single disaster, like a powerful storm that killed many people. Recent studies have only complicated the mystery. Scientists conducted DNA analysis of 38 discovered bodies and found that the remains belonged to people from different eras, separated by thousands of years. These people arrived at the lake at different periods of time, which disproved the theory of the mass death of a single group. The research began 10 years ago when geneticist Kumarasamy Tangaraj from the Indian Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology sequenced the mitochondrial DNA of 72 skeletons. Some had Indian origins, but some of the remains belonged to people with DNA characteristic of residents of Western Europe, particularly Crete and Greece. Interestingly, the time range of these findings also turned out to be diverse. Most of the bones date back to the 7th-10th centuries AD, but among them are remains from the 19th-20th centuries as well. The causes of death for these people remain unknown, which adds to the mystery of this place. An artifact from New Orleans in the United States, in the city of New Orleans. The couple accidentally discovered a marble slab with a Latin inscription in their yard. Initially, they believed it was decorative, but the text soon drew scientists' interest. Research showed that the slab is an ancient Roman tombstone about 1,900 years old. It is engraved with the name Sextus Cangenius Verus, a sailor of the imperial fleet who died at the age of 42. The artifact was considered lost since the beginning of World War II. The last record of it dated back to 1939 when the stone was in the National Archaeological Museum of Civitavecchia, which was later destroyed during Allied bombings. After the war, the tombstone's whereabouts were unknown. The stone was reportedly removed from Italy by American servicemen and later privately owned as a garden decoration. Specialists from Tulane University and Professor Susanna Luznia confirmed the find's authenticity. The inscription matched the 1909-1950 Latin epigraph catalog records. The mention of a ship named after Asclepius, the god of medicine, made it possible to establish that Ver served in the Navy during the heyday of the Roman Empire. The tombstone is currently in the possession of the FBI, and negotiations are underway between American and Italian authorities about returning the artifact to its homeland. United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization representatives said this case will demonstrate the successful return of illegally exported cultural property. We've been observed for a long time. If we're looking for signals, it's logical others might be searching for us too. But what if they found us long ago? In 2020, astronomers published a study that changed how the question was posed. Scientists from Cornell University studied the surroundings of Earth and identified 1,400 star systems, from which our planet can be observed as it passes across the disk of the sun. In other words, to see Earth the way we see exoplanets. Their main conclusion is simple. If there is intelligent life in one of these systems, they might already know that we are here. Moreover, 508 of these star systems are positioned so that Earth would be visible against the background of the sun for more than 10 hours in a row. That's enough to detect an atmosphere with oxygen, methane, and possibly signs of life. They might have detected us millennia ago, observed, waited, and possibly sent a signal that's still en route. The Network Project is a global network of radio telescopes tracking anomalies and signals from deep space. We've monitored thousands of systems, but only silence remains. Modern scientists are cautious, not skeptical. No one laughs anymore at those who say we might not be alone, because there are billions of potentially habitable planets. A tomb that survived an earthquake in the ancient city of Pasargadae, the capital of the Achaemenid Empire, has been preserved, a tomb traditionally associated with the name of Cyrus the Great. The structure was built around 530 before Christ and remains one of the most enduring monuments of ancient Iran. For 2,500 years, it has withstood dozens of earthquakes without losing the integrity of its structure. Studies have shown that the architects used principles similar to modern seismic isolation technologies. The foundation of the tomb consists of several layers of limestone. The bottom layer is bonded with a limestone mortar mixed with ash and sand, while the upper blocks are laid on top without rigid fixation. Between the layers, a layer let the structure slide slightly during tremors, reducing the load and preventing stonework damage. The tomb's upper section consists of large blocks, joined by metal clamps. Despite the simplicity of the cubic chamber's shape on a 6-stepped base, the structure is a well-designed engineering system. Islamic Azad University modeling showed that during strong ground vibrations, the upper part can shift relative to the base, absorbing impact energy. No definitive evidence confirms Cyrus was buried in this mausoleum. The tomb was opened and looted back in ancient times, and the epitaph mentioned in the sources has not survived to this day. despite debates about the identity of the person buried there. The structure remains one of the oldest examples of earthquake-resistant architecture and is evidence that Achaemenid engineers understood the nature of earthquakes much more deeply than is commonly believed. The Panagurishte treasure is a ritual cup, part of the famous Panagurishte treasure, discovered in 1949 in southern Bulgaria. The artifact weighs 845 grams, cast from 23-karat gold with a diameter of 25 centimeters. Rather than the typical ribbed petals, the craftsman embossed 73 miniature Nubian heads in 6 concentric rings around the central recess for wine or aromatic oil. The bowl belonged to the Odrysian king Sevtos III and was probably used at feasts where the elite drank rakia, and demonstrated a connection with the Hellenistic world. Images of African barbarians served as exotic decoration and as a symbol of the king's control over foreign gold sources. These microbes are 2 billion years old. Scientists have discovered the most ancient microorganisms living in the depths of our planet. In South Africa, rocks about 2 billion years old were found, which is impressive in itself. But the discovery of living microbes in them was even more sensational. These organisms are the oldest microorganisms ever found in such ancient rocks. Before this discovery, scientists thought the oldest living microorganisms were in 100-million-year-old ocean floor layers. But the new research showed that even rocks that are 2 billion years old can be habitable. This discovery significantly expands our understanding of life in extreme conditions and its evolution on Earth. Microbes were discovered in a crack of ancient rock extracted from the Bushveld igneous complex, the largest igneous intrusion on Earth. This region is famous for its ore deposits, including about 70% of the world's platinum reserves. Microorganisms living in such conditions develop incredibly slowly and are capable of existing for billions of years. This discovery is important for studying life on Earth and for future Mars research. Microbes that have survived in such extreme conditions give hope for the possibility of life existing beneath the surface of other planets. Psychoactive vessels. In 2024, archaeologists found a vessel in the Temple of Hathor with an image of the smiling god Bez, patron of dreams and childbirth, on its walls. And as it turned out, something stranger. Inside the vessel, traces of a substance were found. Chemical analysis revealed an unexpected mix of alcohol, honey, and psychoactive compounds, some causing strong visual hallucinations. Basically, it was an ancient psychotropic cocktail. Strangely, the vessel was ritualistic. Its contents were used not for pleasure, but for communication, perhaps with gods, the dead, or entities the Egyptians sensed but didn't fully understand. In the same complex, images of beings with disproportionate bodies and eyes were found, too odd to be mere allegories. It is believed that Egyptian priests used similar mixtures to enter a special state. During these rituals, they supposedly received knowledge that could not be conveyed in words. It was from such immersions that prophecies, geometric schemes, and architectural solutions emerged. What if the Great Pyramid was built from someone's revelation? Steel that cannot be replicated. Damascus steel remains one of the most mysterious ancient materials, used to forge blades known for their flexibility and sharpness. The raw material was Indian Wootz steel, which was exported to the Middle East. During the forging process, it was repeatedly heated and cooled, creating a characteristic pattern on the blade that resembled ripples on water. Modern research has shown that the structure of Damascus steel contains nanoscale carbides with iron, which give the blade exceptional strength. However, the technology of heat treatment and carbon control has not yet been fully reproduced. Replicating the ancient method produces similar results, but not the exact pattern or durability. Produced from the 11th to 18th century, these blades symbolize skill and status, prized by warriors, scholars, and collectors in the East and Europe. The mystery of Damascus steel remains unsolved. Modern metallurgists can't exactly explain how past masters combined strength, flexibility, and beauty. The second Sphinx of Giza, the eastern edge of the plateau. Everyone knows the stone guardian by the Pyramid of Khafra, But Egyptologist Bassam Ash-Sham discovered a strange duality in ancient texts. The Sphinx is the father of fear, and the Sphinx is the mother of fear. And here is what lies between the front paws of the current Sphinx. The stele of Thutmose IV stands there, showing two creatures instead of one. A nearby clay tablet describes a statue hit by lightning, which shattered its head by striking its metal crown. Lightning is drawn to metal. Cairo University geophysicists use ground-penetrating radar to survey the dune south of the Sphinx at a depth of around 4 meters. The instruments detected an elongated, dense outline, almost 60 meters long, matching the size of the surviving monument's body, without a head. The signature differs from typical limestone layers, which suggests it is a man-made object. There are several reasons why the find hasn't been excavated. First, there's a risk of sand collapse and cracks appearing on the walls of neighboring temples. Second, official organizations are concerned about disputes over changing the overall appearance of the plateau. Excavation is banned so the possible mother sphinx stays buried, but the complex still preserves half of what its creators intended. The two sphinxes were carved from one rock about 10,000 years ago, when the Sahara's climate was humid. Later, one was decapitated by lightning. The ruined statue was buried with sand. The superstitious priests didn't dare to restore such a bad omen. 1,000 years later, Thutmose IV uncovered and restored the surviving father of terror, but said nothing about the other. Since then, we have only seen half the design, and as long as the mysterious form remains buried, Giza's history is unfinished, like a missing page from the first prayer of Europe. German archaeologists reported a discovery that changed our understanding of Christianity's spread in Europe. In 2018, during excavations of an ancient Roman cemetery in the suburbs of Frankfurt, they found a small silver amulet at the former city of Nida. It was found near the chin of a man buried between 230 and 270 AD, and apparently it was hung around his neck as a personal talisman. The amulet was a thin strip of silvery foil, only 3.5 centimeter long, on which a text had been engraved during the owner's lifetime. For a long time, scientists couldn't read the inscription. The metal was too fragile, and the scroll was too tightly rolled. Only in 2024, using computer tomography and 3D modeling at the Mainz Institute of Archaeology, were they able to reconstruct 18 lines of Latin text. It contains the phrases, "Holy, holy, holy. In Jesus Christ's name, every knee bows in heaven, on earth, and under the earth before him." Words typical of Christian liturgy hadn't been seen in artifacts from such an early period before. The inscription mentions Saint Titus, a disciple of the Apostle Paul, which makes the amulet one of the earliest pieces of evidence of Christian tradition outside of Italy. This is the oldest confirmed Christian text found north of the Alps. The origin of the silver vessel. It took scientists 10 years to determine the origin of the unique silver vessel that is part of the Galloway hoard. The artifact ended up traveling from Western Asia to Scotland. This discovery added intrigue to one of the most important archaeological finds in the United Kingdom. The Galloway hoard was found in southern Scotland in 2014 by detectorist Derek McLennan. The treasure included a silver vessel wrapped in ancient cloth. Now, researchers have confirmed that the vessel was made in what is now central Iran and was transported over a vast distance to Scotland more than 1,000 years ago. Inside the vessel, treasures like silk and brooches were found. Laser cleaning of the vessel revealed intricate patterns characteristic of Zoroastrianism, the state religion of the Sasanian Empire, the last Persian empire before the Muslim conquest. The hoard weighed over 5 kilograms and contained silver, gold, and other valuables. It was found on land belonging to the Church of Scotland near Balmegi. The artifact is dated to around the year 900 AD and will be displayed for the first time at the Silk Roads exhibition at the British Museum in London. Other items from the hoard will be exhibited at the National Museum of Scotland and the Kirkcudbright Galleries. Including the artifact in the exhibition is very important, especially as it contains the oldest recorded silk in Scotland. The Great Void above the Grand Gallery. In 2017, the world was shaken by the news that an unknown chamber was discovered inside the Great Pyramid using Muon tomography. It sits right above the Grand Gallery and is about the same size, roughly 30 meters long. This isn't just a crack or technical gap. It's an actual empty space, seamlessly part of the architecture. Strangely, it's entirely isolated, no entrance, exit, access, or attempts to open it. The scientists from the Scan Pyramids project call this discovery the Great Void. They emphasize that they do not know what is inside. It could be a hidden room, a ritual space, a secret corridor, but something is holding back further research. Over 7 years have passed, but no one has drilled through the wall, sent in a drone, or found the secret. There is a theory that inside there might be something that would overturn our understanding of when it was built, the purpose of the pyramid itself, or the creators, who were much older than Egypt. That's a frightening prospect, because if the Great Void is a sealed capsule of knowledge, then everything we know about the pharaohs might just be a cover story, and the text is still locked inside. A giant pile of sand, listed by United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. Saricum, Europe's largest sand dune, is 18 kilometers from Makhachkala in Dagestan. It stands 262 meters tall and covers over 1,000 hectares. The name means yellow sand dune. It is in the Dagestan Nature Reserve and is a United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization biosphere reserve. The main mystery of Saricum is that it is not located in a desert, but in a steppe and mountainous area where it often rains and trees grow. There are no other sandy areas within dozens of kilometers. The Barkhan's north becomes a clay plain, and its south meets a mountain ridge. Scientists have debated the sand's origin since the 19th century. One theory says the Barkhan formed from ancient Caspian Sea marine deposits. When the sea receded, tectonic processes brought sand layers to the surface. Another theory suggests groundwater streams wash sand from underground to the surface. Some researchers link Barkhan formation to local erosion and wind-driven sediment transport. The United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization designated Saricum a biosphere reserve for its unique flora and fauna, including desert species not usually found in the Caucasus. This place remains closed to active research, which causes debates among geologists and supporters of alternative theories. One theory suggests an ancient city lies beneath the Barkhan, and restricted access preserves both nature and hidden archaeological sites. The moment of the sinking of Ernest Shackleton's ship, the discovery of the Endurance ship under the Antarctic ice in 2022 was a real miracle. Now, thanks to modern 3D scans, we can see the ship that sank in 1915 in the finest detail. These scans reveal the ship's appearance when it was trapped in ice during Ernest Shackleton's Imperial Trans-Antarctic expedition. The technology used for scanning made it possible to capture details such as plates scattered across the deck, a boot, railings, and even traces of a signal flare fired as a farewell to the ship. Endurance has been preserved almost in its original state, as if it sank only recently. These unique 3D scans allow scientists to study the ship, which, due to its remote location and ice cover, is considered one of the most inaccessible in the world, 118 days in the ocean. In 1973, the British couple Morris and Moreland Bailey survived after drifting for 118 days in the Pacific Ocean. Their journey began a year earlier when they set out from Southampton on the yacht Aurelin, heading for New Zealand. After the Panama Canal, their route continued through the Galapagos Islands. At dawn on March 4, 1973, the yacht collided with a whale and sustained critical damage. The vessel sank, but the couple got onto an inflatable raft and rubber boat with limited food, a compass, and some tools. At first, the Baileys used rainwater and leftover food, but their supplies quickly ran out. To survive, they had to catch fish and sea turtles using homemade hooks made from English pins. Previously, the couple followed a vegetarian diet, so switching to meat was a serious challenge for them. They suffered from storms, overheating, constant exposure to salt water, and developed sores. During the drift, 7 ships passed, but none noticed the raft. Their signal flares turned out to be faulty, and they didn't have a mirror to reflect light. Despite physical exhaustion, Bailey and his companions supported each other, tried to stay calm, read books, and kept records. After 118 days on June 30th, 1973, they were spotted by the crew of the South Korean fishing vessel Wyomi 306. The raft was drifting about 2,400 kilometers from the crash site. The couple lost 18 kilograms each, but they were rescued and taken to Honolulu. After returning to England, the Baileys recounted their ordeal in the best-selling book 117 Days Adrift. After recovering, they returned to sea voyages again. A ritual cargo from the Philippines to the island of Guam, the western edge of the Pacific Ocean, 2,300 kilometers east of the Philippines. In the coastal Ritidian cave, archaeologists found microscopic traces of rice in red pottery. The radiocarbon age is 3,500 to 3,100 years. This is the earliest evidence of a cultivated plant being brought to such a distant island. The key evidence is phytoliths, tiny silica structures that retain the shape of leaves and husks after the plant decomposes. Researchers from the University of Guam and Australian National University used microcomputed tomography scanning and petrographic analysis on pottery shards, finding phytolith shapes matching Asian rice varieties. No field cultivation tools or irrigation signs are nearby, so the grains weren't brought for farming. The researchers favor the ritual baggage theory, suggesting rice was used in ceremonies or symbolized settlers' ties to their homeland. This is the only case of pre-European rice use in the Mariana Islands. The plant would not appear on the islands again for another 2,000 years. The discovery shows the first Pacific navigators planned their routes and carried cultural elements, even if those couldn't be grown on new shores, rather than just drifting with currents. Day of Terror. In 365 AD, a powerful earthquake struck off the coast of Crete, causing one of the most destructive tsunamis of the ancient world. The waves reached the northern coast of Africa and almost completely destroyed Alexandria, the largest city in Egypt. Witnesses said the sea quickly receded, exposing the seabed before a huge wave struck Gammon in the coast. Historians believe that the magnitude of the earthquake could have reached 8. Geological studies confirmed the displacement of lithospheric plates in the eastern Mediterranean during this period. Consequently, underwater areas near Crete rose several meters, and Egypt's coastal zones had a series of aftershocks. The destruction was so severe that its memory lasted in cultural traditions for 2 centuries. In Alexandria, annual mourning ceremonies were held, which became known as the Day of Terror. They were last mentioned at the end of the 6th century, making this tradition one of the ancient world's longest lasting. Archaeologists discover flood traces and ruined structures in the ancient port, confirming the disaster's scale. Twice eaten mainly in the gorges of Tanzania about 1.8 million years ago. Archaeologists discovered 2 types of bite marks on early human bones. The first are wide, jagged notches along the edges, like chisel marks left by a crocodile. The second layer, over the first, has narrow punctures and long, shallow scratches, typical of a large cat, like a leopard. The people were first seized by a crocodile, then a land predator reached their remains. Unfortunately, in those times, this was the usual situation for early humans. Water attracts both prey and predators. These findings challenge the belief that humans have always been hunters. 2 million years ago, humans were just one part of the food chain. During evolution, we were sometimes considered resources. A standard trip for water for a human was a chance to get food, and just as much of a chance to be eaten by predators twice over. A good indicator of how dangerous the watering hole was before humans became apex predators. The last witness of Nagasaki, Alistair Urquhart, a Scotsman and a soldier of the British Gordon Highlanders, is considered one of the most incredible survivors of World War II. In 1939, at the age of 19, he was sent to Singapore after the surrender of the British forces. In 1942, he was captured by the Japanese and sent to Changi Camp, where 50,000 prisoners were held in facilities designed for only a few thousand. Later, he was assigned to work on the Burma Railway, also called the Death Railway. The working conditions were deadly: heat, disease, hunger, insects, and brutal punishments. Urquhart endured cholera, malaria, ulcers, and frequent beatings, but survived. He was tortured and locked in solitary confinement, which was a pit covered with a metal sheet under the scorching sun. He spent 6 days there before being sent back to work. Though exhausted, he kept working, watching thousands of prisoners of war die. In 1944, he was transferred to Singapore and then to a Japanese transport known as the Hell Ship. The holds lacked water and air, causing prisoners to die standing from thirst and disease. After 6 days, the ship was torpedoed by an American submarine. Urquhart survived, swam from the burning sea, and spent days on a makeshift raft under the scorching sun surrounded by sharks. Japanese whalers rescued him, but he was soon in captivity again. The prisoner was sent to a camp near Nagasaki on August 9, 1945, when he was in the prison toilet. The city was destroyed by an atomic bomb. Urquhart suffered burns and concussions, but survived. After Japan surrendered, he was freed and taken to the United Kingdom. Alistair Urquhart lived a long life and died in 2016 at the age of 97. His story became an example of human resilience and will to survive, and the book The Luckiest Soldier of World War II became one of the most quoted war memoirs in the United Kingdom. These stories differ in time and place, but share one thing: verifiable data and careful conclusions. Thanks for watching until the end. Goodbye.